So this tutorial video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about basically how I made the game that I made, which is Death and Taxes, Debt and the Tokugawa Samurai. We're going to be talking about how I made it in Twine, but also we're going to be talking about my thought process as I was designing it. And we're also going to be talking about some popular games that you guys might have played and breaking down the components that make up those games, those core components, and how they relate to the game that I made and how they're going to relate to the game that you made. So we're going to talk about that stuff, and then I'm going to walk you through Death and Taxes and show you kind of the back end of what it looks like. But first, let's talk about what makes a good game in general. So any game that you play will be made up of the same basic components, no matter what genre it is, if it's an action RPG, if it's a casual, cozy game on the Switch, or if it's a city builder. There's going to be a lot of similarities between all the different kinds of games that you like to play. So let's talk about what those are. I'm going to do that by breaking down a couple examples for you. So let's start with Animal Crossing, because I know a lot of us have played Animal Crossing. It's a very, very popular game. The four components that I'm going to talk about are the player, the player's goals, their obstacles, and the actions they can take to overcome those obstacles and reach their goal. So those are the components that all of the games that I'm going to talk about have, and that your game will have as well. So in Animal Crossing, the player is basically you kind of make yourself in that game and insert yourself into the Animal Crossing world. Your goal is to pay off your debt and basically max out your house, have the nicest house you can possibly have, and be debt-free. And then you might have meta goals that you make yourself of maybe making your islands look a certain way, or decorating your home a certain way, or having certain villagers on your island. But the main goal of the game is paying off your debt and having the nicest house you can. So the obstacles are, you have all this debt. Nook has saddled you with debt. It takes a long time to pay that back. So that's not very easy. So the actions that you can take to overcome that obstacle and pay off your debt, you can fish, you can sell your fish, you can catch bugs, you can dig up fossils. There's all this different stuff that you can do, basically foraging around your island to gather resources and sell them and make money. You can also buy turnips and sell turnips, stuff like the stock market. But the point is there's all these different things that you can do to pay off your debt and upgrade your house. And that is the thing that you do over and over and over in Animal Crossing, which means that that's the core gameplay loop, is fishing and hunting and digging up fossils and crossbreeding flowers and talking to villagers and all the stuff you do in Animal Crossing. And the components that we see in Animal Crossing and any of the Animal Crossing games, not just New Horizons, surprisingly, is also the same stuff in the Assassin's Creed franchise. You still have a player, a goal, obstacles you have to overcome, and actions you can take to overcome those obstacles. So I've only played Assassin's Creed 2, which may come as a surprise because Assassin's Creed is known for being a fantastic, historically informed franchise, even though it is historical fiction. But I've played this one because this Assassin's Creed 2 is set during the Italian Renaissance, which is what I specialize in. So for those who have played the franchise, obviously let's disregard the modern day sort of meta storyline and let's just focus on the historical storyline. So in Assassin's Creed 2, you play as Ezio, that's your player character, and Ezio's family has been murdered, so your goal is to enact revenge on the people who killed your family. So that's pretty straightforward. The obstacles are the people who did it are part of a very powerful, very secretive organization. It takes a long time to track them down and find them, and you have to kill a lot of people lower down on the totem pole along the way before you get to the big bad guy who is in charge of the organization who's doing all this bad stuff. So the actions that you take to overcome those obstacles is basically you hunt down and kill the people lower on the totem pole until you can get information out of them and progress through the storyline and figure out who is ultimately responsible for your family's deaths and end up taking them out. So surprisingly similar to Animal Crossing, and also surprisingly similar to another game I love, Hollow Knight. This is not the Hollow Knight. The Hollow Knight is one of the final bosses, but you play as the vessel, and basically your goal is kind of the same as your meta player goal, is to unlock the secrets of the world that you're investigating, Hollow Nest, and eventually your goal becomes to beat the Hollow Knight, and your obstacles are in the way is this is a big scary world, it's unexplored, you don't know your way around, you have to find the 3 bosses that you have to beat in order to unlock the final boss. So you have to like go explore the world to do that. And then it's a hostile world, so there's lots of things trying to hit you and attack you and kill you, so you have to attack all of the things and kill all of the things or dodge the things that are trying to hurt you. And you also have to do a bunch of platforming. So those same 4 things that we talked about in the other 2 games, the player, goal, obstacles, and the actions you take to overcome the obstacles towards your goal, exactly the same here in Hollow Knight. And those will be present in the game that you're making too. So in my game, Death and Taxes, the premise is that you are a samurai who is in debt, and your father has just died, and you're waiting basically for your paycheck, and you need to make sure that you have enough money to feed your family until the next time you get paid, which is very difficult. So who the player is, you're an indebted samurai. Your goal is to make it to your next paycheck. The obstacle is that everything costs money and tragedies keep befalling you, and you're on an extremely tight budget, and your father's just passed. Like, there's all these things that are being thrown at you that are inspired by real challenges that samurai had in the Tokugawa period. And then the actions you can take in the game, you're trying to increase your finances and last the 6 months. So the actions you can take are revising your family budget, selling your sword, starting a handcraft business, other things like that. And these are, again, real actions inspired by real things samurai in this period did try to do to overcome the debt that they were burdened with and the financial challenges that they faced. So why don't we get into this, and I'll show you the structure. So if you've seen the other tutorials, this is what Twine looks like. If you haven't, this might be a good place to stop and look at the other ones. But let's get into the structure of the story. So this looks maybe a little confusing, but I'm going to explain what all of this is. So I'm going to assume that you've already played the game. So if you haven't, again, this would be a good time to pause and maybe go give it a play. But basically, so I have some sort of background information here. So these are quotes from the reading that I used to make this game that you probably will have assigned as reading in class. And then we start here where I basically give you the premise of who your character is, and then I set up some logistical stuff on the back end. This is where you find out that your father dies, and then basically you have 6 turns, so 1, 2, 3, and I've labeled them like that. You have 6 turns where you have to basically survive. You have to keep your budget afloat. You can't let your budget go below 0. You can't let your pride go below 0, so those are the 2 variables that you're balancing. And every month that passes, a new bad thing happens that affects your budget that you can't account for. But every single month, you have all of these different options that you can take to deal with your debt and to try and extend your budget, to make more money, to last another month. So if we play this game, so let's just play it start, so I set up all my variables correctly, and we can ignore this for now. This is the basically helping you debug your game as you're developing it. But I'm just going to skip ahead to basically the first month. Okay, so you pay for your father's funeral, and then we're at this screen. So these are the finances that you have. You have the maxed out pride, you're very prideful, and then this is how much you have to spend every month. So if nothing else bad happened, we could last like 3.5-ish months here. So that's not long enough. Even if nothing bad happens, we wouldn't be able to last the full until we get paid again. So these are the options that we can do. So let's just say we move to the countryside. So this will help us stick to budget. This helps us save on some costs. So this makes us a little bit better off. But then something else bad happens to us. But the point is, every action that you have, you can only do once. So I've designed it that way intentionally so that you have to try out different tactics. So let me go back and show you the back end of what this looks like and how I did that. So if we click on any of the ones labeled 1, 2, etc., here's what the back end looks like. So don't worry, this looks like it's a lot, but I'll walk you through it. So basically everything above this line is just like the like bad thing that befalls you that month. and then how it affects your budget. So so whatever I say you have to pay, then I just set the budget to whatever the budget was minus that cost from the event that happened that month. And then I do some calculations here to update, again, the budget variable, what your finances are. Pride isn't affected by the story bit, so that stays the same. And then I just want to show the player what their total monthly expenses are every time, just so that they know and they can calculate that. And then down here are all of the options that you have. So if option A is false, re-examine the family budget links to option A. So what this means is I went ahead and so there's a lot of variables going on here. I set them at the beginning of the story, and I set all of these to false as a default. So let's just focus on option A right now. So if option A is false, then I have access to re-examine the family budget, and I can click on that, and that is option A up here. So then the month decreases, which affects which passage you go to next, and then we set option A to true, so that when we go back into this passage we were just in, we wouldn't be able to click option A again, because it's so since we just clicked this option, we turned option A to true, then if we went to the next passage, we wouldn't see it. So let's play this and just show you, because I'm sure that's kind of confusing if you don't see it. So let's play it. Continue. How are you going to make your money stretch? Okay, so let's click the first option, re-examine the family budget, which was option A. Okay, so we go to continue, and like we said, because of the variables I've set and the way I've increased them, it's always going to take us to this passage, and then I don't have that top option anymore. So the same thing happens with all the rest of the options. Let's do move to the countryside, continue. It'll always take us to the third passage because we're now on the third month and the month variable has increased. And then here you see that option no longer is there. We've already done it. So that works with all of them except for do nothing. You can do nothing as many times as you want. Well, until you run out of money, of course, but you could do nothing as much as you wanted to. The only other one that is different is selling your sword, because you can only sell your sword if your pride is low enough. So if your pride is not low enough, then if I was to do something else and survive long enough, like maybe I'll take out a loan just to get to the next passage successfully. And now I can click sell your sword again because it didn't work. So, but if it did work, then I would take it off of the list. So that's what the backend looks like. That's basically the main structure of the story. Is there's a little bit of setup that goes on up here, and then there's 6 main passages and events that progress linearly, and then every one of these passages you can click between this series of options that is always going to link you back in order. So if you want to play around with this yourself, on the website where the game is, let's go back to that. If you scroll down, you can download the HTML file that is this game, and you can import it to your own Twine story, and you can look at everything and see exactly how I've written the code. But let me show you, the last thing I want to show you is, so at the start, I had to set all of these variables at the beginning so that they would work. So all of the things that make up your family budget, so I had to set all of those. I set the total, because I wanted to show you your monthly expenses as a total, so I set the total to the sum of all of these individual parts that I just set. Like I said, all of the options I set to false at the beginning, and then when you click on them, it switches it over to true. And then these are the variables that basically impact like how you're doing in the story. Like the lower your pride gets, the worse off you are. Your budget decreases over time, and you're trying to keep it high as possible. Month and payday are basically just inverses of each other, but that basically keeps you on track of the story linearly. So yeah, this probably is not going to be super helpful in terms of like how step by step I made this, but hopefully this gives you a sense of the way I was thinking about making the story. general setup, the core events that happen, the options that you have at your disposal, and then the ending. And then, like I said, this game and the games that you've made have the same basic components as of every game you've ever played. It's going to have a player. The player should be aligned with you, the person playing the game. Like your character you should be able to project yourself onto them in some way. That character should have goals. There should be obstacles preventing you from easily reaching your goal, and you should have a series of actions available to the player to overcome those obstacles and reach their goal. I highly recommend rewatching some of the tutorial videos as you're designing your game, and also thinking of other games that you enjoy playing, what made them good, what made their story compelling, and then take the things that you liked about them and try to put them into your game.